Well, hello there. Glad you could join me. So, I wanted to come and do a live here. And just up front, this is going to be a ramble, but hopefully a good ramble. This is going to be about my story, what it is that I'm about, and what we do here at the Red Road of Life in Christ Native Intertribal Fellowship. How did it come to be, and where do we go from here? So, to tell you my story, let me back up. There will be quite a few pauses here because I'm thinking, and none of this is scripted, and this is something that's been on my heart and mind for about a week and a half, and I feel moved to do it. You know, sometimes we have to stop and look around. The clouds here today are just very beautiful, and that's what I was watching when I was playing the flute. But my name is Amahi Adayona. Means water bear. It actually means a little more than that, but I don't give the full name, but water bear is good. And so tomorrow we're having our Native American service, and I hope that you can join online or in person. If you'd like to be in person, message me or comment below for those on Facebook, and I will send you my address and location if you've never been here before. But let's get into the story, and let's have some tobacco here. I know, terrible habit. By the way, for those on YouTube or Facebook, I am not encouraging or recommending the use of tobacco products. This is, for me, in talking about something very sacred to me, and tobacco being a sacred medicine to many indigenous Native American tribes and elsewhere. So like I said, my name is Water Bear, and I come on here and I do these little ministry type topics, and I give talks and hold ceremony and stuff for people online and in person. I am a descendant of the Cherokee people and also of the Scottish and Irish, German. I'm a mutt, but in my heart I am Cherokee. And I was born in Bristol, Tennessee in 1990. So I'm 35 years old, getting ready to be 36. And born and raised in Bristol. Had a mom and dad. Was born and grew up with a mother and father. I was raised in a Christian home. Mom was Methodist and became Baptist. Dad was Baptist, and we just went to whatever good churches we could find. It didn't particularly have to be a certain denomination. And so grew up in that lifestyle. between the ages of, let me just go ahead and say, in this talk, there is some trigger warnings to violence, anything that might trigger you in regards to religious vocabulary or terminology, particularly Christian. Just be aware of that. And so it was brought up in a pretty good, decent Southern home. At first, nothing amiss. Everyone has their problems. There's no perfect family. And so around the age of 3, in between 3 and 4, I was very wrongfully molested, physically abused, not by parents, but by outward sources, no kinship. And like I said, I grew up in church. My dad was a very good man, had his problems, but he loved me very much. And it's him that I primarily get the majority of my Native American blood from. I get just a little drop from my mother's side, primarily through my father. Then, at the age of about anywhere between 9 and 10, and for privacy reasons, one of those parents began an affair, which consisted over many years. The other person was very forgiving and lenient and giving chance. Both played their role. Neither one justified the other. So there was the distortion of a breaking in family. So I experienced inward breaking and I experienced family breaking. I wasn't the popular kid. I wasn't per se bullied or anything in school. I was in between. When I was little, I had a false conversion to Christianity. I more so went along with this other kid that might have actually converted, but they wanted me to tag along. But I got enraptured with it and became very zealous, and for what I knew at a young age, I was probably around 5, 6, or 7. A little bit before my parents' problems started happening. And so I was enthralled in this zeal for God. And then what happened with the parental affair broke me a lot. And so I had pretty much blamed God for it all, asking God that this certain parent would not continue to do these things, and so on and so forth. So I took my anger out on God and religion. In the process, I was always a very spiritual person, even as a small child. I experienced some spirit interaction, ghosts you may call it. The forest was always a magical, enchanted world to me. Had a very vivid imagination. Loved fantasy and enchantment and stuff. And after all that occurred, as I'd said, took my anger, my hurt, placed it on God. I never became agnostic. I never became atheist. I guess I had experienced too much to take that route. And so I went into two streams of flow of spirituality. One was witchcraft, or Wicca, you may say. I like that word better. Witchcraft has such a hard. And then Native American spirituality. And I would flip between the two, you know. And I'm also a Gemini, so that might explain why that happened that way. And I've always felt like I've walked between two worlds. I've always felt like kind of two individual people in one person, but yet one person. Not no split personality or anything like that. And looking back at it all now, it really makes sense. And so I went that route for a long time. And then at the age of 15, after going through divorce and everything, and custody and all that, and just living life, I was infatuated with lightning and thunderstorms. Well, I would used to go out in them, and I would take my anger out on God in the lightning and thunder. Maybe like shake my fist at him and stuff. And then later on in time, it was just to amuse, just to watch and ponder. As I grew older, I kind of let that subside and just was going my own way. And then at the age of 15, I was swimming in a river, a big, big river. And my dad had always had a couple of dreams of me drowning, so he was not very fond of me being in the water without a life jacket. And so I was sitting out there in the water with this life jacket, and I had turned it around, made it like a chair, and had the back, what goes on your back, I was sitting on it and had the arms up like this, so I'm just kind of floating here in the water, and sort of like now watching the sunset in the river. And I looked up, and the awareness of divine surrounded me. And I didn't make any particular idea of any God or anything, but I just said, there has to be a God. And about a month later, I was at home with my dad and, at the time, the current stepmother, Jacasa. She has since then passed on, and so has my father, Jacasa. And Jacasa is just a Cherokee word for saying they're no longer here. They've made the journey. And it's something we say after saying one that has passed, said their name. We say that afterwards. And so, about a month later, big old giant thunderstorm came by. And to this day, I look for it to come by in July, about mid-July. And it never fails. Is it the exact same storm? Probably not. But there's always a big storm that comes around here sometime in July. And I had went out on the carport that was connected to the house. And I went out there to make a deal with God. As you can see, I am not full-blooded Native American. And at the time, that's what I was in alignment with. That was the trend I was going with. was with Native American, and I always stuck with that one a lot more than the Wicca or anything. Like I said, in my heart and spirit, I'm all Native. But so I went out there and I said, God, you do this for me, and I will do this for you. And if you agree, strike the lightning this many times, do this, do that. Well, lo and behold, it did. And thank God used that as a way to get my attention. And then I kind of just stopped for a while and I pondered. And as I was pondering, the atmosphere changed. And I didn't hear it audibly, just more kind of in my heart and mind. Something very faint saying, I can't do anything for you unless you're saved. Now, that was the terminology I knew growing up in a Christian home. And I am to this day a Christian. And so when I heard that, it's like the light bulb came on. And I recognized where I stood with the Creator. I recognized who Christ or Yeshua really was. And there was an exercising bench off to the side in the carport where I used to work out on. And I sat there, and it felt like Christ sat right beside me and put his arm around me. And I began to bawl, not cry, but bawl. Didn't even kind of know why per se, but yet knew exactly why. And, it's something, the first sensation, the first emotion that we all feel coming into this world is fear. If you're a baby up in a womb and you're all snugly warm, just floating in that water, and you're just all curled up and you got everything you need, you're safe, you hear your mother's voice, you hear her heartbeat. It's the first sound you ever hear is the heartbeat. And then the water comes out, and the walls start crashing in, and you're pushed out of this tunnel. And it's fearful. And the first noise you make is a cry. And in a lot of ways, when Christ was talking to Nicodemus, saying, unless you're born from above, I'm sure we kind of experience the same thing that way. Our world kind of shatters around us. We get enclosed in. And the first sensation that we might feel is fear in the process. But then, when I felt that arm around me, and then there was something, I don't know what, there was something that just came alive inside me. And what turned from sorrow turned into joy. And very much like a baby. They cry, and then they're comforted by their mom and held. Very much like the Holy Spirit. And then they start to ah and ooh and wonder. And so I had became a Christian, and I went out into that thunderstorm with my hands raised and praising Creator, and went inside and told my dad and stepmom at the time. My dad, he cried, and stepmom, she mocked me and stuff, but then 2 weeks later she got saved. But so I went down that road. This time it was not a religious zeal of, oh, this is cool. It was a relationship. I had been introduced and birthed into a new family, and I had a father and a mother that I had never experienced before. And so I was growing, and Creator brought people into my life and took me places and things. And then at the age of 18, I answered the call to preach, but the church I was attending at the time thought I was too young and didn't believe me. The pastor did, and some close friends did, and my dad did. My dad was always supportive of me, and my mother did as well, and she was always supportive of me. And I would sort of do like St. Francis. I would get on a stump and preach to the squirrels and the birds and all that. And when the church did not accept that or agree with that, it hurt me a lot. So once again, a family break, because church supposed to be family, not a religious organization or a business, but a lot of times it's like that. And so I was hurt, and I had this bad habit back then, and I'm not as prone to do it now, but to just throw my hands up and say, heck with it all. And so I went away from church and Christianity, and I went away in some ways from Creator to a degree, but not like when I was a kid, because there was something different. There was actually a relationship and a connection there that there was not there when I was a child. And so I dove back into Native American spirituality. Got on the powwow trail, became a powwow dancer and drummer and all this and that. Started a tribal youth group with some friends long ago, and this lady, she had a bunch of kids that would come to her house and stuff, and she was Apache, and her children was Apache and Mexican. And so we would have these tribal youth get-togethers and stuff, and it was prepping me for ministry, what it was. And so then I went up on this hill, and I was doing this eagle dance, and something told me to go off to the side, and I went off to the other side of the hill there, and not physically, visibly, but in my mind's eye, as clear as if it was physically. It was like Christ walked up to me where I was sitting and said, "You're not doing what I called you to do." And so I, at the time, had long hair and stuff, and the reason why Creator moved in my heart to get away from that was not because it was bad, but I was holding to it so strongly I couldn't hold to Him. And so I cut my hair. I got rid of a lot of my native stuff, and I regret that now. And then I became a minister, answered the call again. At this time, I was 20, and so I had about a year or so of in this wilderness journey. And so I started a youth ministry, and it lasted for probably about 4 or 5 years. And me and some of my friends who are still friends with me to this day, we interacted with other churches. We had multiple denominations that would come together, and we called it Changed Youth Rallies. And we would rotate and let young people give testimonies and preach and all this and that. And no one got paid for anything. It was all out of the heart. And so that lasted for its time. And then people started getting older and had to go their own way. And that came to an end. It was very sad, but did not affect me like other times, because different scenario. At this time, I had met the person who would later become my wife. I went to Bible college in North Carolina in an associate's degree. Got married, came back here, and 5 years down the road, I get divorced. And it played its part because I was reliving what I grew up in. When you become a father and a husband, you only know what you've been around. Your mind can only retract back to what it has learned. And so I started acting like my father. And like I said, my father loved me very deeply, but he had his faults. And my wife at the time, she was doing the same thing with her upbringing of her family. And so they both just clashed. And when it started affecting the little girl, which wasn't biologically mine, but every bit and every other way was. And so I experienced again the brokenness of family. And this time, I majorly had caused it. And so I about lost my faith, almost gave up on everything, almost gave up on life, if you know what I mean. And so I went back into Native American spirituality and Wicca, dove very deep into that side as well. But I could never let go of Christ because Christ could never let go of me. And so that progress, that wilderness went for a good long time, about 5 years. And then I met a person who was a Apache holy man. I didn't know where I needed to go in life. And so Creator brought him into my life, and I went on a vision quest. And so on this vision quest, I experienced what you are learning about today. What I'm doing today is from that vision quest. And so in that vision quest, I experienced grief. I experienced terrorizing fear. there's no other way to put it. And it's in layers. And the vision quest, it breaks you down. It kills your ego. It drives you to your limits, so you kind of get into the spirit world. You're kind of in the physical and the spirit world at the same time. And everything that limits you and holds you back, you confront. One day it was insight. One day it was just grieving all day throughout the day. One day it was fear. But each thing came to an end and you mastered it, you conquered it. And then on the last day, I received my vision. Actually, it was on the third day. The fourth day was just letting it integrate into me. And so from the vision, the animals that appeared to me either physically or by what we would call hallucinating or in the mind's eye was the panther, the bear, the wolf, the buck deer, the dragonfly, the chickadee, and the gray and fox squirrel, gray squirrel and fox squirrel, and doves. And then a jumping spider. And from all that, my vision was that I am a person that is to be a storyteller. I am a person that is a healer. I am a person that holds ceremonial sacred space for people to help them heal and connect. And the greatest part of the vision that really came in full force like a hammer on the head uh, was the story of the water spider. And I had this little jumping spider that was with me, and or she, and she would sit beside me and talk with me, and with her little tentacles like this. And I had a fire, and she jumped into the fire, right into the coals, sat there for a second, and jumped out. And when that happened, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I could see in my mind's eye this island of a tree on fire, and this woman in white buckskins walking across the water, carrying a flame and giving it to me. That is the story of how fire came to the Cherokees, except it's not by a woman, it's by a water spider. But the water spider is a woman in the story, or female water spider. And she weaves this bowl on her back and takes a coal and carries it across the water. So that's what I saw, and that's where my name came from. And a real bear did interact with me and sit with me and stuff. And so that brings us to today. In summary, I have experienced 3 different worlds, and I have 2 of those genealogies in me, Celtic and Native American. I've connected to both of those worlds and ancestry. And the one in the middle has always been Christ. And it's through and learning through Him and the divine that I now can walk in both of these worlds and be a bridge, a pathway, a guide, a transition for people to heal both sides, because natives and whites have been hurt on both sides by each other. And we need to heal that. And a lot of it has been hurt by legalistic hypocrisy religion, or hypocritical religion. And so what this is not a religious organization. This is about family. This is about not do this, don't do that. It's more an introduction to a relationship. And I learned and seen that Christ is everywhere. You can say Creator has put His witness and mark in every culture. You can find Him there. While the culture itself may not be orientated to Creator, the evidence of His presence is there in some form or fashion. And I like what the mystic and monk Thomas Martin said. It's good that the settlers brought Christ to the native people, but they failed in not seeing Christ already there. And so in doing these services with the native and the druid, that's my goal, is for you to see that you're not really grabbing something that is far away. You're just embracing something that's always been there. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. It's always been there. It was there when you was in the womb. It was there when maybe you were physically hurt, referring back to when I was around 3 or 4. It was there when your family broke and fell apart. It was there when you was going down the trail of either no spirituality, no religious beliefs at all, or diving in the most far-fetched left or right type faith you could find. And someone has asked, a couple of people have asked me, we have entertained this thought of turning this into, to use the word, a church, but it's more of a ministry where family can come together. And you don't have to believe in Christ to come to this. You don't have to be Christian. But there needs to be a mutual level of respect and understanding and love and consideration. And so a couple of people have asked me, if this really kicks off, what are we going to do with it? How are you going to structure it? What's it going to be about? And the thing is, you can't please everybody. And you can't be a yes man or a yes woman all the time. And so, in pondering on this ministry, this family, this sacred lodge church is being designed while anyone and everyone is welcome to come and attend and find your place of expression and connection through nature, through ritual and ceremony, through community and humanity in connecting with one another, finding the divine. But as for those maybe that might be an overseer or something, it's going to stay Christ focused. Now you notice I didn't say Christian, I said Christ, because something is happening in a lot of people's lives and in America. And time is circular. It's only linear whenever we need to get something in our head and heart, but time is circular. It repeats down through the ages. And a lot of times in the Old Testament, the Jews would build the temple, it'd get up to its height, peak, and everything, and then it would fall down. Someone would come in and crush it. And a lot of people are deconstructing from faith and stuff, but they're stopping once they've tore everything down. Sometimes stuff being torn down is wonderful. My family being torn apart was wonderful. My different ministries falling to ashes, wonderful. Now the cause and effect, it ripples. And there is pain, there's scars, there is hurt. I'm not justifying any of that or covering over that. But what I'm saying is, sometimes you got to be broken before you can be healed. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you look up. If you're deconstructing, probably what you're deconstructing from is a really good thing to break away from. But don't stop there. Reconstruct. And I believe that the great mystery, great spirit, peacemaker, is calling people out from the religious organization. Starting movements like the Forest Church. If you haven't heard of that, look it up online. It's a great thing. Forest Church, Forest Chapels, and stuff. And in the Native American community, man, there is a lot of revival going on in Native American community, and it's not the church system. It is saying that It is okay that you can be Native American. You can smoke your prayer pipe. You can smudge with your cedar and sage sticks. You can pray with your drum and follow Christ. You don't have to become this westernized idea of what a Christian is. Don't have to cut your hair, guys. And so that's what this is about. And so if you're Wiccan or White Norse pagan, come on. If you're homosexual, lesbian, gay, come on. Because it's not about of cleaning you up. It's about introducing you to someone that has loved you eternally and will love you even after you're gone. And maybe I'll do a video on what all it is that I believe. But yeah. So where do we go from here? We go from here that this is a sacred space for the family of humanity to come together and, learn that whatever your heritage is, connect to your roots, that you can connect to your roots and connect to the divine, just like a tree. The roots go down, the branches go up. And maybe you'll learn why nature connects you and speaks to you more than anything. And maybe why you look at the stars at night. And why do you look at the stars at night? Because you were meant to be one that they are looking at down here. And so, while we can give a good story and maybe say some things in some fancy ways of ooh and ah, and oh boy, that was good. What it really comes down to is, in my life, I've been gifted and I have been given the privilege and opportunity to experience some things, to see some things, and to meet the one that has always loved me, and to spread that around. And like I said, you may not agree with me, but I hope in some way you can see that, maybe you might say, I don't agree with what he believes, but what he's doing is good and beautiful. It's refreshing, it's healing. And while maybe myself, I'll never be a Christian, I don't want anything to do with Jesus, but he's changing on how I view Jesus. And this is not a view that is unbiblical. It's actually very, very biblical, but it has been camouflaged through the filterization of tradition and culture and legalizations and all this and that. And so where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? We just start walking in beauty. And so if you want to come to this, if you want to come in person to the services, you're more than welcome. This is not a one-man show. This is a community. Everybody has their place, their gift, their opportunity to express and experience their life physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And at the end of the day, that life is worth living, and that we have relationship in that life we are living. So if you like the sound of all that, if that calls to you, I'll say like Andrew the apostle said to one of the other apostles when they first met Jesus, just come and see. Just come and see, and maybe you might hear that invitation, that whisper, follow me. So with that, my friends, I am Water Bear. and I have spoken. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, either online or in person. And may Creator richly bless you, enrich you, grow you, and may you be a star that somebody wants to watch and look at. Until we meet again. Walk in beauty.